Impact Wrestling Slammiversary has a lot of surprises. WWE has its fans returning. W hits another milestone, and we talk about some of the more disturbing aspects of the wrestling community. This is the Rantin Review podcast. What is going on again, you sexy bitch? Welcome back to the Rantin Review podcast. We are back on the airwaves, on the Podbeans and the Spotifys and everywhere else that you can get podcasts. It's available on all the networks now, so pretty cool to see you guys again. It's been a bit. We will be talking mostly about wrestling news today and about a couple other things here and there. There's a lot to actually go over since the last time we did a podcast before all the changes here. But before that, so you gotta get used to doing this again. Before that, let me talk to you guys about getting back in shape. We're in midsummer. You know, if you haven't hit the beach yet, you probably want to hit the beach and get yourself looking pretty good before you get back to the beach. So I suggest using my good friend Courtney Bell and her Yoga Current series. She's got a bunch of free stuff at yogacurrent.com, YOGACURRENT.com. In addition to that, she does have a Patreon page available through there where you can get some more exclusive stuff, possibly even some one-on-one tutorials from Courtney, depending on what you want to do. If you want to get more muscular or you want to lose a little bit of weight or get your cardio up or whatever it is. Very cheap, not very expensive. Not too overpriced. It's the right price for the right amount of stuff. So she's pretty awesome too. So check that out, yogacurrent.com. Hit up Courtney and let her know that the Rantin Review sent you guys over to her. Now, let's get into what's been going on. So first thing I'm going to do is talk about the channel situation. So I had to go and redo the channel. Let me just explain this very quickly. My YouTube channels. After the whole TV Asahi thing last October, I think it was, when my original channel, the Rassslin Rantin, got shut down for reasons we won't go into again. We talked about this enough over the last 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it's been. I decided to get back on YouTube, and the problem was I lost all my old channels. So all the old revenue I had come in went out. So what I thought to do, as I said, well, I could just make this about all the stuff that I'm interested in. Since I'm interested in so many different things, why have multiple channels? Just do it all once. You only have to get monetized once, and then you can just do different stuff. It has been suggested by many people to not do that, and there are reasons for that. And I was like, well, we'll see. Now I know the reasons. Now I know the reasons why. I've seen it for my own eyes. And yeah, it's not good to have one YouTube channel covering multiple genres, especially as many wide and varied and almost diametrically opposed things that I'm into. So even for the time being, the simple things I'm into are a bit different. So the Rantin Review is back to being a pro wrestling channel. It is the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling now. The gaming stuff is now on the Rantin Review Gaming, and the movie and TV stuff is guess, the Rantin Review Entertainment. We also have, of course, Wrestling with Finance, which I separated out before all this anyway. So I am now back to 4 YouTube channels. May do a 5th one because I still don't have my coding. The old channel I used to teach coding on went with all the other stuff too. So I'm going to start that back up at some point in time if I ever have time to do it. So that's what's going on with the channels there, and that's why everything's separated out. So feel free if you're interested, because I know, and there's been some crossover on my channels, and some of the new gaming people that have discovered me have said, they like to watch the gaming stuff, but we were talking a little bit too much about wrestling for their liking, and they really did. There's like 1,000 other gamers who are doing stuff, but they don't have to hear that. So I was like, all right, I got you. All right, so we're gonna keep them all separated. Of course, if you are into gaming, you can always check out Rantin Review Gaming. If you are into movies and TV, Walking Dead, Marvel movies, Netflix shows, old school stuff, whatever, you can check out the entertainment channel. And of course, if you're interested in finance and money, which I don't know who isn't, but if you are and want to know how to get some little info, maybe some insider tips, maybe some things you don't know, check out Wrestling with Finance on the YouTube. So that's the story with the YouTube channels. Now, this edition of the Rant and Review podcast will be, again, like I said, primarily about wrestling, because a lot of stuff came up this past week, and let's just tackle that here in this episode. So probably the biggest thing for most of my audience is the fact that Impact Wrestling had their Slammiversary event on Saturday night. I went and caught up with it afterwards, like at 1 o'clock in the morning. I started checking out some of the stuff that I could, because I didn't watch it live. But before I even got halfway through the show, I start seeing all of this stuff pop up all over the place about Jay White, Switchblade, making a shocking surprise appearance, which he wasn't the only one. Mickie James was there. No Way Jose, no longer Jose. He's just No Way. He's there now. Finjuice returned to Impact Wrestling. But the big shock of the night was at the end, following the Omega Sami Callihan match, which was an excellent hardcore match, by the way. You definitely got to check that out. Omega did retain the Impact Heavyweight Championship, but afterwards, we had Jay White, Switchblade, coming out, shocked the crap out of everybody. He comes out to the ring with his Never Openweight Championship and confronts Kenny Omega. Now, the two of them have not had any interaction since their days in New Japan about 3 years ago. Right before the Elite were about to leave and head off to go make AEW, but they have met before. Many people, if you don't know, if you're unfamiliar with New Japan or you weren't around at the time as a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling, there's this whole storyline that Omega and Cody Rhodes were having a rift between each other. And this is the beautiful thing about New Japan storylines back in this time frame, back in that era, which I think is one of the best eras of any wrestling company. There are all these intermingled storylines with Omega and Okada, Omega and Cody, Omega and the Bucks, Omega with trying to recruit Jay White, and Omega and Kota Ibushi. So all this stuff was revolving around Kenny Omega. So Omega was trying to recruit Jay White to become the newest member of Bullet Club, kind of like when, and I've seen this recently with friends of mine, when the marriage isn't working, you know, Cody and Kenny were kind of having problems, and Cody kept going around, Bullet Club is fine. He wanted to be the leader, and Omega wanted to be the leader, and Tama Tonga didn't want nothing to do with any of them. So Omega, trying to smooth things over, added a new member to Bullet Club, kind of like getting a new baby, and it was supposed to be Switchblade Jay White, who had just made his return from excursion and had a match with Tanahashi the night before, because this was happening at New Year's Dash, the day after Wrestle Kingdom. So it was after the Jericho Kenny Omega match. So Omega decides, hey, we'll get this new guy in here. He'll help us out. Unbeknownst to Omega, Jay White had his own designs. He turned on Omega, did not want to join Omega's version of Bullet Club, and hit him with the Blade Runner. This led to a U.S. Championship match for Kenny Omega's IWGP U.S. Heavyweight Championship, in which Jay White beat him. And the one significant meeting between the two, Jay White did win and won the U.S. Championship off of Kenny Omega. There was this whole other blow up after the match involving Hangman Page and everybody else, but Jay White, for a time, he said his kind of mission was to go in and kind of disrupt and destroy all those factions. And he kind of was a monkey wrench thrown into the Elite that spiraled off into a whole bunch of different storyline plot points for them. Meanwhile, Jay White was also causing chaos in Chaos, which then eventually led to him turning on Okada and becoming the actual leader of Jay White in his new era as the last rock and roller. Well, here we are many years later, and Omega's doing his belt collector thing, and for the first time, now he did interact with Kenta for a little bit on Dynamite, but this was the first confrontation that Kenny Omega has had with any of the big four in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Big four currently being Kazuchika Okada, Kota Ibushi, Tetsuya Naito, and Jay White. So this is a main event player in New Japan that Kenny Omega is now finally come face to face with for the first time in 3 years. It's the first time since he left. And a big one too, because, you know, the whole premise behind this thing is that Jay White is like real Bullet Club. He's legit original Bullet Club from where Bullet Club actually exists. And all the stuff that Kenny and the Bucks and Gallows and Anderson are doing are kind of trading on the name without really being real Bullet Club. You know what I mean? So here's like, it was kind of like, oh, the real guy has come out to kind of confront you for using the name when Jay White is the official leader of the real Bullet Club. He didn't approve you guys. So he came out to confront Omega. So Omega, Don Callis, and Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, or Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, are in the ring. And they're all putting up the two sweets, except for Omega. Omega looked very concerned because he didn't know what Jay White was going to do. And Jay White is a legitimate threat to Kenny Omega. Because Jay White, people gave him a lot of flack, but especially after the Wrestle Kingdom match this year with Kota Ibushi, which is one of the best, definitely going to be in the top 5 at least for a match of the year this year. Jay White has really stepped it up and has established himself as a legit main event, big time player in the wrestling world. And you can see the fear in Omega's eye about this guy. This is a guy that could take him down. This is a guy that has taken him down before. Omega spiraled out of Bullet Club after the whole Jay White fiasco. So, storyline wise. So, there's some concern here. Now, the problem with the Impact feed, though, is that the feed cut off. Now, there was a lot of conjecture whether that was by accident or whatnot. It wasn't by accident. They did it on purpose. Even if you look at it and see the way they did it, they cut it off right as somebody was sliding into the ring. The point is, because Impact's been doing so bad in the ratings lately, they wanted an incentive for people to watch next week's Impact show, to find out what happened. Or to at least go on the internet and start sharing the buzz about what happened. So a bunch of fans took footage of it, put it up online within minutes, and everybody got to see what happened after the credits. So that it's a tactic. I understand what they were trying to do with the tactic, but it's a bad tactic in the year 2021 when everybody's got smartphones and everybody can post things online. Like back in the old days of the Monday Night War and the old school wrestling, Crockett territory, you could end the show. And quite often a lot of wrestling shows ended like that where, oh my God, somebody's coming to the ring. What's going to happen? Catch us next week. And then you'd have to tune in next week to find out what happened because we didn't have the internet, and any fans that were in attendance, they may have told a few people, but it couldn't get around the world anywhere near as fast as it does now. So nowadays that doesn't work because 2 minutes later you can see what happened on Twitter, and Facebook and Instagram and anywhere else. So it came out that Juice Robinson and David Finlay came to the ring. They attacked Jay White. The Elite guys ran out of the ring. Sami Callihan came to join in on it. And then Jay White snuck a Blade Runner on David Finlay and then left the ring himself. Now, this is all to set up the Resurgence event that New Japan is bringing up, which is close to being sold out, not quite sold out yet, in LA at the, I think it's at some sort of amphitheater at the LA Coliseum. So that's setting that up, and it's interesting now that they did this on Impact. Now, some fans were a little bit disappointed because they're like, this really should have been on a bigger show like Dynamite. Not now, because it would take away from the Hangman Page feud that's going on Dynamite, and that's their thing, so I understand why they're not doing it on Dynamite right now. It does bring some eyeballs over to Impact, and it does increase this legend of Kenny Omega because he's got enemies all around the world. He's got enemies in Japan, in Impact, in AEW, in CMLL, or AAA, sorry. He's got enemies all over the place that are gunning for all of his championships. So what this actually is, they did not get into it. But we just had a confrontation. We just had a stare down. And the guys were putting up the too sweet in the Elite. I mean, even that is off kilter because for those of us who do watch New Japan, Jay White changed that thing around. They don't do the too sweet up high. They do the too sweet down low. So they weren't doing it the right way. And Jay White's like, you guys don't even know how to do the two sweets anymore. We changed that. Right, so I'm very curious as to where this is going. Now, the rumors are, the thought logically would be that the October pay-per-view, Bound for Glory, I think it is, for Impact Wrestling, is going to be when we see this match. Again, I have to say though, this kind of takes away from the Impact homegrown stars. Sami Callihan is probably the biggest one that they could have thrown up against Omega. They had the match; it was a great match. Callihan lost to Omega, but once again, here we are bringing in somebody from outside of Impact to have the star power to get some eyeballs moving, because honestly, they don't have anybody else in Impact that can get the attention that it did from this whole Jay White, Kenny Omega confrontation. So hopefully it works out for them, and hopefully we do see that coming up in the near future, and hopefully this can now translate over to New Japan. Now, this is a big piece of that forbidden door being open. And it's not between, ironically, New Japan and AEW. It's between New Japan and Impact Wrestling, where we have gotten one of those confrontations that we've been waiting for when we heard that these companies were working together. And one of the dream confrontations is what's going to happen when Evalda's, Kenny Omega claiming Bullet Club and Gallows and Anderson and the Young Bucks and Don Callis claiming being Bullet Club, and Kenta didn't seem to be too enamored with them. And what happens if Jay White gets up in Omega's face? I don't even think anybody was thinking that was going to happen anytime soon. And then out of the blue, here we are. So this is a pretty big story for New Japan fans, for international wrestling fans, for a lot of fans around. I know a lot of people, there were some people I saw were like, hey, this should have been on a bigger show. Trust me, this has gone on around the world. It's on New Japan World. I've seen articles about this in Japanese news, wrestling newspapers. UK's talking about it. Australia's talking about it. Obviously, because Jay White's from Australia. So this is big news around the world out in pro wrestling circles. No, not in the WWE sports entertainment circle. But that's not the entirety of the wrestling world, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit later. AEW hit another milestone this past week. They had over 1 million viewers for this last episode of Dynamite. It took them a couple weeks to get back to where they were. Again, we've talked about this before, how they get these big momentum swings, and then something will happen, and then the pandemic happened, and then they got a momentum swing again, going into Double or Nothing, and Double or Nothing, it came out with that being a great show, and the ratings were up over 1 million. They weren't against NXT anymore, and then, you got to take a month where you're not going to be on Wednesdays again. So they lost a chunk of their audience over that time period, and then it took about 2 weeks for the audience to come back, and now with them back on the road, we'll see if this being at over 1 million viewers every single week is going to be the new normal for AEW Dynamite, or is this just a thing because of the newness of them being in front of live crowds again and fans wanting to see that, or is this a result of the fact that the past 3 weeks they have had some outstanding episodes of the show with outstanding main events? I tend to think if you put on quality long enough, and if enough people are talking about how great your show is, if it's really good, more people will start watching it and they'll come back to it. And I think that's maybe more of what happened than anything else. Because the week before was really the big week to say, hey, we're back in front of crowds and we're back out on the road. You thought they would have had a big bump that week, but no. This was a result of the fact that prior show was a big week, and the surprise of Malachi Black, I think, had a lot to do with it too. So it's basically a lot of AEW doing a lot of things right and getting a lot of buzz and putting out shows that are enjoyable and that people can sink their teeth into. And that's what's going on right now with AEW, and I think they've done a magnificent job. And, again, for any wrestling company, I hope that they are successful, especially AEW. And the main reason for that is, it's not a AEW versus WWE thing. It's just that simply, I have said this for a long time, I want wrestling to get back to being this viable entertainment medium that is not just one company, like the movie industry. It's not just one studio. It's not, even though Disney's the biggest, it's not just Disney that's putting out movies. Fast 9 is not under Disney. Some of the other stuff isn't under Disney. It's not just one record label. It's not just one TV channel. It's not just, one studio doing this. We need to get wrestling back to the point where there are multiple places where people can make big money. And AEW is definitely that. AEW is definitely a major league wrestling company. Hopefully Impact can get something out of this. The downside, it seems that Impact is losing audience. And they're just having a hard time regaining their own footing because, honestly, what are they? Third, maybe fourth? Because Ring of Honor is coming back on strong now, which might push Impact down to being like the fourth company if you're not counting NXT as a separate thing from WWE. So I don't know. Impact's in a tough spot. They're doing some good stuff, but they're just in a tough spot as being kind of decidedly third or fourth tier wrestling company. So who knows? But good stuff for AEW. We got another big Fyter Fest show coming up this week. They got a lot of plot points going on, a lot of things that we're going to be interested in. So I'm going to be keeping an eye, and I haven't been paying attention to the ratings until this past week, but I'm going to keep an eye on the ratings for the next couple of weeks just to see, just as a gauge, not as a bragging rights or anything, but just to see how the general public is receiving AEW and if they are, in fact, growing their fan base. And how will this translate next year when they move to TBS for Dynamite and Rampage on Fridays and then have those quarterly shows back on TNT time will tell. We'll see what happens with that. They weren't the only ones, though. SmackDown came back. Live fans, 16,000 sold out. New stage, and the usual stuff we talk about with WWE. It's a new stage and new graphics, and that's as cool as that is. That's the best thing you can talk about a WWE show. I've said this for a long time. WWE is sports entertainment, and sports entertainment is not about storytelling. It's not about character development. It's not about wrestling matches. It's about pomp and circumstance and superficial layer stuff. And if you're a person who's very wowed by the 4th of July, it's basically like a 4th of July every week. It's a big, loud, colorful things going boom, and big and loud and silly and that's what people tune in for. For as far as that aspect, their production, of course, the WWE's production, they are the best in the business by a long shot. That's where they excel at. No one can beat WWE's production quality. That's just not going to happen. It's the content that is of question. Now, I didn't watch the full SmackDown show. I caught all the clips on YouTube of it. Seems like the 4-way match might be something I'm going to go back and look at sometime this week. The Kevin Owens, Big E, Seth Rollins, and who else was in there? I think Shinsuke Nakamura's match. That seemed to be a match where they were putting some effort in, and it seemed like a pretty good match. The rest of the stuff on the show seemed like more of the common WWE stuff. 5-minute promos from Sami Zayn, 5-minute promos from Baron Corbin about it. Stuff that I'm just like, why am I? What? Really? I guess the big counterpoint to Malachi Black debuting on AEW Dynamite was Finn Balor, now leaving NXT and coming back to the main roster now on SmackDown, who attacked Sami Zayn. The problem with this, here's the big difference between these two things, right? This is a great illustration of the two companies, and when I talk about doing things just for the aesthetics of them and then doing things that people go, ooh, I want to see where this goes. Malachi Black's debut in AEW and him attacking Arn Anderson and Cody Rhodes has me going, ooh, I want to see where this goes. What's going to happen next? Finn Balor attacking Sami Zayn, not quite the same effect. Again, Finn Balor, technically he wasn't in the main roster, so he's, to some WWE fans, that means you don't exist at all, I guess. But it just doesn't have the same impact for WWE that Malachi Black's debut had for AEW. And I'm not really all that interested in seeing, because we all kind of know where it's going. Sami Zayn's going to say crazy, wacky stuff. Finn Balor's going to talk about being a real shooter or whatever. And they're going to have a match probably at SummerSlam or maybe even tonight. Who knows? And Balor's going to beat Zayn, and then he's going to move on to something else. And it doesn't feel like it's of anything of consequence, though. Whereas Malachi Black, given the fact that we know Cody Rhodes is going to be taking some time off to do the next season of the Go Big Show, and there's speculation by myself and some other people that Cody Rhodes might be turning heel soon or should turn heel soon, there's a lot of, I want to see what happens there with that. It's fresh, it's new, it's exciting, and there's all these elements to it. We don't know where it's going. Sami Zayn and Finn Balor, we know where it's going. It's going to be one match, and that's going to be the end of it, and then they're going to do other stuff. So that's kind of the difference for doing stuff for reasons of content that's going to make people intrigued in watching what happens next, and doing things that are like, hey, we did this cool thing. It's going to there's going to be a match. You already know everything that's going to happen. And, there it is. So, I don't know. I am going to watch I think it's tonight, the Money in the Bank pay-per-view from WWE tonight. I am going to check that out. By the time you hear this, it's probably either going on or it's already happened. So I will be doing a review of it on my YouTube channel, along with a general news review about wrestling over the weekend. But, it's one of the few Money in the Bank, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, and SummerSlam are the 5 WWE pay-per-views that I absolutely will watch. Because those are, I feel, the ones where the real stuff happens on those pay-per-views. Some of the other pay-per-views you can literally miss and not miss a damn thing about what's going on in WWE. But big things happen. This is one of the big 5 I consider for WWE as far as their pay-per-view schedule. Because, of course, the person who wins Money in the Bank will have a contract for either the SmackDown or Raw, the Universal or World Heavyweight Championship on the men's side, and the Raw or SmackDown Women's Championship on the women's side. And those Money in the Bank ladder matches are always entertaining anyway, and you see some of the best action in WWE of the year at those shows. So I'm definitely going to check it out and hope to see something pretty cool tonight. Lots of other crazy news going on. Just some other really quick notes. Nia Jax has been tweeting out weird things that get people speculating whether or not she's leaving WWE. I think at this point WWE should just turn her off her social media. She just says really silly stuff. Whatever. Bayley is out with a ACL tear. I know I've had one before. ACL tears are nothing to joke about. Could be and should be out for between 3 to 6 months. It takes that long to recover from an ACL surgery. So best wishes to her. Michael Elgin and Alberto El Patron are in legal hot water again. I'm not even getting into it because it's so disgusting. But it doesn't seem like they're good guys. I can't judge them, but it doesn't sound good what's going on with either one of those guys. And it's a lot of domestic abuse stuff and things with women and abusing women. And I'm not going to try them. It's not for me to try these guys. I'm not on the jury and I'm not a judge, but don't sound good from what's come out about it. But yeah. So, in New Japan Pro Wrestling over there, there's a week off now, so some of the guys are getting a rest up as they get ready for this big Tokyo Dome show that's coming up. They have released a card. It looks like, I thought they were going to be doing a full card, but it looks like it's another one of these 5 or 6 match cards. Although, again, unlike the cards over the last couple of months where they've had 5 matches and only one of them is really a match of consequence, at least all the matches on the card are matches of consequence. So it's not like 4 meaningless multi-man tag matches to build to some match down the road. These are actual 5 matches for championships, and in the case of Kazuchika Okada and Jeff Cobb, a grudge match. So these are all meaningful matches that they're going to have at Tokyo Dome, which they have to do. You can't do a Tokyo Dome show the way they've been doing some of these last couple of tours, or even what they did with Dominion. So we'll see. I don't know what the crowd's going to look like there, but New Japan, I think they're kind of hamstrung until the pandemic is over in Japan. And I don't expect them to kind of get back into form until that's done. So everything now is kind of like, well, we're going to check it out. It should be cool, but, who knows? Last little bit I want to talk about today as far as pro wrestling is the wrestling community. I stay off of social media these days. I don't talk on Twitter too much. I mistakenly went back on because of the whole Jay White thing. And then it led me down a rabbit hole, and I immediately regretted going back and looking at Twitter again to do anything outside of posting up, post about new videos that I have up on YouTube. The same nonsense is still going on, and this is the weird thing about the wrestling community, right? It is a community. I'm sorry, yes. I love wrestling. I love half the wrestling community, and then the other half I cannot stand. The other half of the wrestling community is some of the dumbest, worst people that you could possibly want to ever talk to. And the really sad thing about it is that they're not really... The worst thing you can be is a person who is dumb, who thinks they're smart, and thinks they're outsmarting people who are clearly smarter than them and are clearly right about something that they are wrong about. That is the worst thing. And I've said this before. We were talking about this back when... AEW was announced to be going to TBS, and all these morons went out, oh, it's a demotion. It's like, no. They're not going to be preempted for a week and then lose the momentum on the audience, which is what they just went through. Being preempted off of Wednesdays for 4 weeks. They lost like 200 to 300,000 people from their audience that they were averaging, and it took them 3 weeks to get back up to that 1 million plus level. Well, if they're on TBS, they're not going to have the same problem. So it's a win for them. Plus, TBS has actually more homes than TNT. And TBS is also the historical place for wrestling. It had wrestling was on TBS for decades and decades and decades. It was the first place wrestling was on cable. But, to people who are ignorant of that, or people who just want to look at things through certain prisms just so they can shit on something, which seems to be a lot of wrestling fans, and particularly the WWE sweaties, who are the worst of the worst. And then you try to talk to people and explain it, and it's not even worth your time, which is why I don't bother with it anymore, because these people are just so giddy about saying their dumb stuff, And it's like, it's weird because there's a pattern to it too. And some of you out there know what this pattern is, right? So like, somebody who doesn't really know a lot about pro wrestling, they only really know, and I hate to just pick on the WWE sweaties, but they're the worst. They're the worst at this. Like, there are definitely other groups of wrestling fans, indie only wrestling fans. They can get obnoxious about stuff and then just say stuff that's not true, and exaggerate things that aren't true about WWE. There's Impact fans. There are AEW loyalists that are annoying. There are a lot of wrestling fans that, in a lot of different groups, that can be annoying. Old school wrestling fans can be annoying. Russo's people are annoying. Cornette's people are annoying. And all of these indoctrinated people that are going off of this mantras that other people told them to, basically repeating shit that other people told them to think. That is intentionally biased and slanted towards making, whether it's Vince Russo or Jim Cornette or WWE or AEW, look the best. So it's a slanted viewpoint. And then you have a bunch of morons running around there regurgitating these slanted viewpoints as if they are facts and truths. And if you don't agree with it, then you know what they say. You're a mark. You're a smart. You live in your basement and you do this. And it's like, for me, it's hilarious because some of y'all know me. I have a channel, financial web channel. I talk about finances and how to make money and keep money and grow money all the time. You really think I'm some old dude living in his little basement? You really think that I don't have any money? Most of y'all, we just talked about the fact that I've had 4 YouTube channels talking about 4 other widely diverse things that I do. I have a full-time job, have a house, had a house, and had those for a long time. Okay? And here's the thing, most of the people that these guys argue with are kind of in the same boat I am. We're not all just, in fact, most of us aren't, some incel, that's the thing. We're not incels living in our parents' basement. Most of us have actually been watching wrestling for a long time. Most of us who haven't been watching for a long time, are smart enough to go back and learn about old school wrestling. Most of us have full careers. We have lives outside of freaking wrestling. We can talk about other things besides just wrestling. But you deal with these kind of morons. And they were coming out for the Jay White stuff. They were coming out really ticked off about Dynamite getting 1 million viewers. They were coming out and pumping their chest about SmackDown's ratings, which I'll talk about a little bit after this before we wrap up. And they were just pumping their chest about it and saying all this stuff and just spewing crap at all the other wrestling fans in the community. And it's like, you are the reason. You are the reason that this industry and this community is where it is. WWE and AEW shoulder some of the blame on this too. Well, obviously a little bit more at WWE because they've been around for longer and they've been putting out this message to their fans, to their sweaties, that you're a part of our universe. Our success is your success. And because we're number one and it's the only thing in your life that you'll ever be number one at, then you should take this on and go out and be an idiotic warrior and tout what we tell you, that only our stuff matters and everything else doesn't matter. Hell, they were doing that this week with Harry Smith. Oh, I saw the clip for his on YouTube for SmackDown. He's competing for the first time in 10 years. You're not competing for the first time in 10 years. That's the kind of stuff that just, because they know that a lot of their fans don't know any better. And they spout that kind of nonsense. And some of their fans do know better, but then go, well, there wasn't in WWE, so it doesn't matter. It's that kind of mentality. That is just so infuriating if you're a fan of wrestling. Because it's that kind of nonsense that A, it's a lie. B, a lot of their fans who defend that crap know it's a lie and defend it anyway and go, well, that's the way, because that's why they're the number one. Look here, buddies, given these ratings, they might not be number one for too long. And, you have asked me 3 years ago, I would have thought, nobody's giving it close. But that's not the case anymore. They are getting close. SmackDown did have over 2 million viewers this past week, but this was the first time in a number of weeks. I have not been following SmackDown and Raw's ratings. I hear about it every once in a while, but I don't pay attention to that crap anymore. But I was interested because, again, it was the first show with fans after the pandemic and after Thunderdome. And I heard everybody raving about how they got over 2 million viewers. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. SmackDown's been under 2 million viewers? For how long? You know, I'm sorry to you to the WWE sweaties out there, but Jesus Christ, for 10 years, more than that, WWE has been slowly hemorrhaging an audience. I remember it was 6 million viewers, 5 million viewers, 4 million viewers. I remember a lot of the YouTubers losing their minds because when it hit 3 million viewers, oh my God, 3 million viewers, is WWE going out of business? 2 million viewers. They've been under 2 million viewers for Raw and again, I don't follow WWE that closely anymore. They've been under 2 million viewers for the last couple of months on both Raw and SmackDown. SmackDown even worse because SmackDown is on network television in prime time on Friday nights. Fox Sports, under 2 million viewers. AEW's just getting back over 1 million. And God knows what if without all the preemptions and everything, who knows what AEW could do if they could build momentum by having their show consistently on Wednesday nights for more than 3 months. Without having to then reset every time something happens and then they got to be off for a couple weeks and then they got to do this and they got to do that. You know, and on an average week, again, we're going to have to see about 3 or 4 weeks from now what the average winds up being. And if AEW is averaging 900 to 1 point whatever million viewers, and Raw and SmackDown are back to averaging under 2 million viewers, I mean, viewership wise, there's only a couple 100,000 viewers separating the two companies right now. And all it takes is really honestly, all it's going to take for AEW to catch up is one really transcending feud. And the wrestling community is about due for one too. And when I say a feud that transcends the wrestling business, I'm talking about like how the Von Erichs and the Freebird feud transcended world-class championship wrestling in the early 80s beyond just Texas and made world-class a national wrestling company that everybody was watching and paying attention to. I'm talking about how the Four Horsemen and Dusty Rhodes transcended the Crockett era and then everybody knew about it. I'm talking about how Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper transcended just the Northeast and the WWF and became a national company. Steve Austin and Austin McMahon feud, the NWO feud, you know what I mean. We've had these feuds, we've had these storylines, we've had these rivalries in wrestling that went beyond and caught fire with not just wrestling fans, but people who may have been wrestling fans in the past and decided to check it out again. But if you talk to the WWE sweaties, they don't think that. No. No, WWE will be number one forever. I would say it's a very bad thing when you ask the WWE sweaty, again, not the regular WWE fans who are usually normal, decent people, but the asshole fans, they come out with, I'm like, what did you like about WWE? Well, they're number one. Okay. Well, it entertains me. Okay, how does it entertain you? It's just entertaining. Like when you can't answer what it is you actually like about the show, and it's just a blanket, it's entertainment, which is what WWE has told its fans to say. It's entertainment. This is about entertainment and putting smiles on faces, and their fans just repeat and regurgitate this stuff. They don't even know why they're watching. Certainly not for the content. I can understand the spectacle, and it seems also to be some sort of weird elitist thing. But you're being an elitist amongst a community that only has, right now, maybe 2.5 million people in it. You're using ridiculous language that nobody outside of this community of 2.5 million people even knows what it is. You're pumping your chest about this stuff. It's a community where there's a community where these morons took. I kid you not. This is one of the craziest things about the wrestling community to me that makes me just cringe about that half of the wrestling community that does this crap. You made up a slang term using the word smart, smart, and you use it as a pejorative, as a negative, as a knock against other fans because they're more knowledgeable about the genre than you are. But by being so, and being more nuanced than what they like and don't like about the genre of wrestling, whereas you don't know as much, so you don't know any better, and how dare you want me to know more, and how dare you know more? That's a bad thing. Being smart, using and giving fans the label of being smart fans is a pejorative. So what does that mean? That you're dumb? I always tell people, like, using the term mark and smart the way wrestling community uses it is one of the dumbest things in the world, because the only people who know what you mean when you call somebody a mark or a smark are other marks and smarks, which makes you a smark and a mark too, because you're the only people that know what the hell that shit means. They still just, it's amazing to watch all these morons just go around and just keep throwing it out at each other. You're a mark, you're a mark. No, you're a mark. No, you're a mark. It's like, you're both marks. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God. It's just, that half of the wrestling community drives me nuts. That's why, again, I don't post a lot on Twitter. I try not to read a lot about Twitter anymore. But if something big story like what happened with Jay White happened, I go and check it out to get the information, but you can't get the information without seeing all the stupid shit. And then, again, seeing the stupid people say the most ridiculous, stupid things, get into arguments with people who clearly know better than them. And I see this all the time. Some of you guys, because I follow a lot of you guys, and I see some of the discussions you guys get involved with. And I look at the responses they give some of you guys, and I'm shaking my head. I'm like, this person doesn't even know what they're talking about. And they think that putting smiley face emojis and laughing gifs and stuff at the end of their nonsensical rebuttal, which amounts to is, you're a mark. That's about as best as it is. WWE is the number one. That's all they have. It's the same thing over and over again. And they think that putting a smiley face emoji somehow means they've won the argument. And I understand why it's frustrating to so many of you guys, because you're dealing with somebody who's really acting like a jackass. They're like laughing at their own stuff and validating. They're like winning the argument in their own brain and then acting like they've won it when they haven't. There's nothing more entertaining than a fool. And a fool who thinks that they're not a fool. But hopefully most of you guys can avoid some of that stuff. And hopefully you guys are avoiding that stuff. Again, it's unfortunate that seems to be the dominant strain for discussion on social media. And it's not just in the wrestling community. It's in a bunch of different communities too. But that's just, it's terrible that it's that way. But that's why we have these other avenues that we can talk about. And that's why I try to keep my channel as clean from those people as possible. You know, yeah, it's going to sacrifice me, being seen by more people. But I'd rather have a space where you don't have to worry about that kind of crap than have to constantly be reading dumb things from stupid people who don't know anything and think knowing something is a bad thing, and then make fun of people who know more about stuff than they do as if that's a bad thing. And the last really weird thing about that is that they think that that's the reason why, those marks, and they're the reason why wrestling isn't popular anymore. No. You're the reason why wrestling isn't popular anymore. Because if you're representing the biggest wrestling company in the world and what its fans are like, a bunch of people who can't tell you why they like a show, and the only reasons they can give are because the stage is expensive, and there's pyro and fireworks and smoke and virtual reality, 3D and superimposed things, but nothing about storylines or characters or the content. There's nobody that they're really behind or anybody they really hate or anything that's really grabbing their attention. They're just watching it because it's WWE and it's big and loud and colorful. And you're watching shows with bad comedy and bad acting and bad writing. And because you're part of the universe, which means you're part of the show, somebody will tell a very stupid joke and then you'll applaud because that's your line. That's what you're supposed to do. Somebody said the word, he said the word ass. We're supposed to go, ooh. There's a big difference between that and then certain other wrestling shows where when somebody actually says something funny, the crowd genuinely laughs because it was actually funny. They're not laughing because that's what they're supposed to do because they're part of the show. They're laughing because it actually was funny. They're oohing and eyeing because the match they watch actually does things that are like, holy crap, I've never seen that before. And oh my God, these guys are pushing themselves past their limits. And I can see that. As opposed to these guys are just doing the same thing that they've always done, and they know they've only got certain amount of time, and they need to make sure that they hit their poses at the right spot at the right time in the ring. Anyway, enough of that about the wrestling community. I had to get that off my chest because I haven't done a podcast in a long time, but it reminded me why we're there. Now, I think I have some ideas that I want to try to float out, but I want to keep building up my channels. I got too many ideas. I can't take on too many more projects, but I hopefully somebody else out here will have the same kind of idea about getting a place where pro wrestling fans, and I mean pro wrestling fans, I mean people who like wrestling, because the fans who have existed for the last 100+ years, who like going to a show where there's a ring and there are characters that they like, that are involved in storylines that they're interested in, that are resolved in matches that actually are exciting, and you can see that the people are putting an effort into it. For fans like that, who like that kind of stuff, regardless of whatever the name of the company is, hopefully someday somebody can make a social media space for that. Because dealing with this crap on Twitter and all these other in current places, it's maddening, man. The community is like much like the country right now. It seems like it needs to split into two different places. The people that live in reality and the people that don't live in reality. And it's not along the lines that you may think it is. But that's a conversation for another time. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Hopefully we all will enjoy Money in the Bank tonight from WWE. And again, it's usually one of their better pay-per-views of the year, so it should be at least entertaining. And maybe they'll do something that's, a little bit more than just, hey, look at our stage. And I'm coming down on them a little bit, but that's all I saw from that SmackDown show was there's not much content here, but it's a big, big, loud, colorful thing. But I want to know what you guys think about all this stuff. You can always hit me up. Pay attention to my Patreon too. I had to redo some stuff on my Patreon page. I've been trying to find some wrestling matches, especially some old school ones where there's no commentary. Try to dip my hand into commentary. So I'll let you guys know when that's coming out. That'll probably be in about 2 weeks where I have some new stuff on the Patreon page for patrons exclusively to watch some matches and maybe do some live commentary on them. But until then, you guys be safe. Remember, I got a bunch of YouTube channels. You can check out the Rant and Review, gaming, entertainment, pro wrestling, and wrestling with finance. We got a lot more stuff coming up for you guys pretty soon. So until then, I'll see you guys out there. Be safe, behave yourselves, but not too much.